Hello and welcome back. My name is Teresa from the blog and YouTube channel freetoflower.com, where I share our life on our European farm, slow living, cooking from scratch sourdough, and the philosophy behind why we do things the way we do. If that resonates with you, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming. Growing up, I was a sick child. Not dramatically, not in a way that anybody was particularly alarmed by, just chronically, persistently unwell. Colds that lingered, digestive issues that were considered normal, a general baseline of not feeling great that I genuinely did not know was not how everyone else felt all the time. I grew up thinking that was just my body, and honestly, a lot of other people were going through exactly the same thing around me too. It wasn't until I met my husband and got married that I started to question that assumption. He didn't live like that. The people around him didn't live like that. And slowly it dawned on me that what I had normalized as my physical reality was actually a pattern. One that had something to do with how I was living, what I was eating, what I was putting into my body, and what I wasn't. And that realization changed everything. I didn't make one big dramatic switch. It was gradual, research-led, sometimes confusing, often slow, but the through line of everything I discovered was the same idea kept showing up in different forms. That the resources we need to be well are largely already around us. That all medicine at its root comes from plants. That the pharmaceutical industry did not invent healing. It extracted it, isolated it, patented it, and sold it back to us in a form that is often more convenient, but not always more effective, and rarely without side effects. And that a more whole, more traditional approach to health and nourishment, one that works with the body rather than just suppressing symptoms, was available to me if I was willing to learn it. That's what today's video is about. Not a lecture, not a manifesto, just a day in this kitchen and on this land, doing the things that have become completely normal to me over the past several years. Foraging, fermenting, making food from scratch with real ingredients, the ordinary practice of an approach to living that I think is genuinely worth sharing. Dandelions are one of those plants that most people spend money trying to get rid of, which I find genuinely funny because dandelion is one of the most useful plants you will find growing freely in almost any garden or field in Europe and other parts of the world. Every part of it is edible and medicinal. The leaves, the flowers, the root, all of it has a use. I love to use dandelions in my sourdough bread. I'm going to link that recipe down below. But today, I am using it to make a tincture using the whole plant, leaves and flowers macerated with alcohol, which acts as a solvent and draws out the active compounds. Dandelion is particularly well known for liver support. It supports bile production, aids digestion, and has traditionally been used as a spring cleansing herb. The idea being that after a long winter of heavier foods, dandelion helps the liver process and clear. I make this tincture every spring. This is my second or third year doing this now, and it has become one of those seasonal rituals that marks the turning of the year for me in a really satisfying way. I want to say something about this approach to health because I know it can sound vague or unscientific to people who didn't grow up thinking this way. I am not necessarily anti-Western medicine. I'm not suggesting that nobody should ever see a doctor. What I am saying is that I became very tired of the compartmentalized, symptom-focused approach of conventional Western medicine. The approach where you go in with a complaint, you get a prescription for that specific complaint, and nobody asks what might be causing it or what could be done differently upstream. That model kept me sick for most of my childhood, and I don't think it served me well. What served me better was starting to ask different questions. What is my liver actually doing and how can I support it? What is my gut doing and what does it need? What does my body actually need to function well and where can I find that in the simplest, most whole form possible? Those questions led me to plants, to fermentation, to food as medicine, to foraging on our own land, And they led me here, making a dandelion tincture in my kitchen in spring on a European farm because it genuinely works and because I understand why it works, and that understanding matters to me. You have seen me make what I'm about to start making over here many times before. If you've been following this channel, I've been testing and retesting this recipe many times over to make it absolutely perfect. And also my family is just completely obsessed with these and we eat them way too fast. What am I talking about? I'm talking about my sourdough granola bars that use sourdough discard, the portion of starter you remove before feeding. If you've been following along, you know that discard is something I use across a lot of my baking, and the reason is simple. It adds a depth of flavor that you just don't get from the standard recipe, and it means nothing goes to waste. Same culture, different application. And these are made from oats, nuts, seeds, honey, good fat, whole ingredients that actually do something useful for your body. They keep you full, they give you sustained energy, they don't cause a crash, and they're incredibly practical. You can make a batch, keep them in the fridge or freezer, reach for one when you need something real and quick. The combination of genuinely nourishing and convenient is rarer than it should be. I'm going to tell you something about why I've been making these so often lately and why I've been so focused on getting this particular recipe exactly right. For the past several months, I've been quietly working on something that I'm really excited about. A cookbook, focused entirely on traditional nourishment for the postpartum season. Real food, whole ingredients, the kind of deeply nourishing recipes that new mothers have been fed by their communities for centuries in almost every culture around the world, and that somehow got completely lost in the modern approach to birth and recovery. I've been researching, testing, going deep into traditional postpartum foods, and putting it all together into something I genuinely believe is going to be really useful for women navigating this season. The cookbook is coming later this summer. I'm not ready to share everything about it yet, but I wanted you to know it exists because this channel and this community is exactly who I'm making it for. And this granola bar recipe is in it. It's also free right now when you join the waitlist. I'll link that in the description below. It's the best way to stay close to this project as it comes together, and the first place you'll hear everything when I'm ready to share more. Kombucha was actually the beginning of all of this for me. Before the sourdough, before the tinctures, before any of it, there was kombucha. I have been brewing it for about 10 years now, which makes it the longest running fermentation practice in my life by quite a long way. I came to it the same way I came to most things in this space, through research, through asking questions about my health, and finding that the answers kept pointing me in the same direction. The gut just kept coming up. The microbiome kept coming up. The idea that so much of how we feel, our immunity, our digestion, our energy, even our mood, is downstream of what is happening in the gut, and that one of the most powerful things you can do for your gut is feed a diverse, consistent supply of living bacteria. Fermented foods are the traditional answer to that. Every food culture in the world, before refrigeration, before the modern food industry, had its fermented foods. Kombucha, kefir, yogurt, sauerkraut, kimchi, sourdough. These are not trends. They are very old solutions to a very old need. And the fact that we stopped eating them regularly as a culture and simultaneously saw an enormous increase in digestive disorders, autoimmune conditions, and chronic illnesses is not, I think, a coincidence. I brew kombucha in batches. I always have a big batch going. It's just part of the rhythm of the kitchen at this point. It takes very little active time. It costs almost nothing. And I genuinely notice a difference in how I feel when I'm drinking it regularly versus when I'm not. An added plus, my kids absolutely love it and gobble it up whenever I serve it. So we typically have a glass of kombucha with our lunch almost every single day. After 10 years, I can say with real confidence that this is not placebo territory for me anymore. It just works. If you'd like to see some of my favorite kombucha recipes, I'm going to link them in the description box below. Dead nettle is another one that people walk past without knowing what it is. It's not stinging nettle, despite the name and the similar appearance. Dead nettle doesn't sting at all. It grows abundantly here on our land, especially in the flower beds that I did not weed recently. And in spring, in early summer, it's just everywhere. It's genuinely lovely, mild, slightly earthy, and works beautifully in eggs, soups, anywhere you might want to use spinach or any other tender green. It's also nutritionally impressive, high in iron, minerals, vitamin C, the kind of nutrient profile you would expect from a dark leafy green that grows wild and hasn't been bred for shelf life or commercial yield. Wild plants tend to be more nutritionally dense than cultivated ones for exactly that reason. They're not optimized for anything except for survival, and that robustness shows up in what they contain. I forage almost entirely on our land, which is one of the things I love most about where we live. Knowing what grows here, knowing what's edible, knowing what has a use, that knowledge feels really important to me. It connects me to this land in a way that just owning it never would. And it means that a meal like this, eggs from our chickens, greens from our field, bread from the grain I milled myself, is genuinely and almost entirely from here, from this place. And there is something about that I find deeply satisfying in a way that is hard to fully articulate, but easy to feel. I don't think the way I live is for everyone. I don't think everyone needs to be making tinctures, brewing kombucha, and foraging their own greens. But I do think that the underlying idea that we have outsourced an enormous amount of knowledge about our own health and nourishment, and that reclaiming even a small part of that makes a real difference, and it's worth one sitting with. For me, it started with being tired of being sick and not getting real answers, and led me here, to this farm, to this kitchen, to this way of living that feels more whole and more honest and more connected than anything I knew growing up. I'm still learning. I probably always will be learning, but I feel better than I have at any other point in my life, and I think that is worth something. Everything from today, the tincture recipe, the kombucha process, the granola bars, will be linked in the description box below. The sourdough ebook is also there if you're just getting started with fermentation and sourdough is where you want to begin. Thank you so much for watching. If this video resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. There's a lot more coming, and I think the next few months on this channel are going to be really good. I will see you in the next one.